How's everybody doing this morning?
Awake, barely.
I second that.
I don't know if it's always a plus to be awake, but sometimes it is. Later today, I'm going to be taking my first vaccine shot. Really looking forward to that. If you guys have heard any rumors about people gaining mutant powers, I'd really like to hear them. That'd be so cool if this was all ruse by the U.S. government to give us all superpowers so we could save the world. That'd be pretty cool. I'm thinking probably it's not, but still one can hope. So let's go through and do roll really quick. We do have at least one person, I believe, who is going to be doing a critique. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And there were a number of others there were at least 3 others that volunteered that said that they were going to. If you guys have your own stuff that you could do critiques on, that would be great. Let me take roll, and then we'll talk about that really quick. Is Kayla here?
Here.
Excellent. Sarah? Camilla?
Here.
All right. Sarah, is that you that just popped in?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Nicole?
Here.
Excellent. Bailey? Is Madeline here?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Emma, you're here. Grace? How about Summer?
Here.
Excellent. Is Kelly here? All right. Catherine?
Here.
Taylor?
Good morning.
Good morning. JC?
Here.
Alexis?
Here.
Brianna? Brooke?
I'm here.
All right. Lauren? How about David? David, you just popped in.
Yep.
Hiram, you're here. Rachel?
I'm here.
All right. Okay, the people that I missed are Bailey. Are you here? Grace? And Brianna. All right. We've had some of these teams meetings where only 3 people showed up, so 3 people aren't here yet. So that's not a bad score. Now I do have, and Kelly. Is Kelly here? Okay. Did you folks see that I put up a PowerPoint on the channel last night?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. That is the first person who was able to get one done. And I think it's a really pretty good example of the kind of thing that we're looking for. Because she did spend one slide talking about the life of the person, but the whole thing was not a book report on his life. It was just to give some context for his art. And I thought that was nicely done. I recommend everybody check it out. She needs to get 10 views on that, and please help her to get those. And we have a couple others that are going to be, sounds like they're going to be put online this week as well. So please remember, if you put it on YouTube, or if you record it for me to put on YouTube, then you get extra credit for that. And if you're one of the first 3, then you get extra credit for that too. Now, I would like, before we go on any further, can we go ahead and do the artistic critique reports now? I'm hoping that whoever has not done one of their own, if you can do it, like over this next week or so, we've really got to get those done as rapidly as we can. So who sent me the, what's it called? Who sent me the image?
I did.
Okay. All right, let me pull that up and do a screen share. Are you ready? Would you mind doing it now?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the image that I've got. Are we looking at the middle piece?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. All right. The floor is yours.
Okay, perfect. Um, the reason I chose this piece is for kind of a weird reason. So I'm from Oregon, and where I grew up in Oregon, they had um, a children's playground, but it was all filled with art that you can climb on and um, just like mess around on. And these little sculptures are like exactly what like the giant sculptures at the park looked like. So it just reminded me of something that I'm very familiar with. And they call it dinosaur bones. At least I did, because I think they look like dinosaur bones. So looking at this, I automatically was like, "Oh my gosh, it's dinosaur bones!" Which obviously I don't think the person that made this was going for dinosaur bones, but I don't think it's a horrible interpretation. Um, or it could be honestly human bones. I know that sounds super creepy, but I automatically just think, the white, you know, and then just like the unique shape. It's super soft and rounded. It looks nice to like be able to touch. That also sounds weird, but like it just looks smooth. It looks like easy on the hands, easy on the skin. Um, I really like how like they sanded it super well, so it does have that very like gentle, like slick look, almost very soft. You can kind of see on the left and the right side. There's these little like shaded parts because of the indents of it. Um, and that just shows how well it's curved and how unique that looks. Um, so I really like it just because of like the sentimental things like it reminds me of. um I don't really have any like negative things to say about it. I mean, the one thing I would say was I'd love to see it bigger, but obviously that wasn't like part of this project. But like a bigger scale would have been like super unique and cool. um yeah, I think it was really well put together. It looks like something that was very planned, like very very intentional. um and I think what they were going for, maybe it, because the one thing I can also think is like it also looks like almost like an elephant. Maybe I'm off, but like the trunk and then the two ears. um Maybe that's what they were going for. I'm not super sure unless they told me. But I love the piece. I think it's super unique. um I think it was very well executed.
I that this is something that I think that was very well done. You did a good job. One thing that I think is interesting is um, I think as artists, we have a right to kind of decide what something is. And so when you say this kind of looks like an elephant, but it could be off, it may very well be an elephant for you, even if it isn't for anybody else. But I agree with you. I really like your talking about the human bones and dinosaur bones, because you're right. It does look like something from a spine, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Do you see that too?
I do see that.
Okay, I think I think you did a really good job, and I'm very pleased that you did not go on for like a half an hour. That was very nice.
Thank you.
All right, now we have another one too. Sarah, are you? I think you just sent me a couple of images. Is that right?
Yeah, that was me. I was figuring how to screen share it on my side, but it's so much easier if you could do it on your end.
Yes, I will do that. I'm having a hard time. My computer doesn't want me to download the second image, so we just got the one image. So I will share that one. If that is that going to be okay? If we just have the one image.
Yeah, we'll have to make do. It's no worries. Hopefully it's on the discussion post, so it's available if anybody's curious what the other side looks like.
All right. Can you everybody see this?
Yeah.
All right. Good. All right, Sarah. The floor is now yours.
Awesome. Well, for description, we're looking at a black and white sculpture. Sorry, a black wire sculpture of looks like a life-size cat against a white background. The sculpture is free of a base and uses the walls as part of the installment. We see a static cat in looks like a vertical motion using the wall to stretch out its arms and legs. The primary contour is soft and round with little edges. Looks like the wire is used sparingly to reveal an open, lightweight interior form of shapes. We can tell that the artist used long pieces of wire with little connections to keep attention on its primary line contour. And for the same purpose, it looks like the artist used a white background with the black wire to emphasize the line quality and give the illusion of a kind of a two-dimensional feel. The lack of distraction from the wire also allows a lightweight, stylized sculpture to come through. We can tell the artist had to work with their surroundings from start to finish. Position of the cat's face, paws, hind legs, and torso all stretch keeps our focus on, I think, the cat's actions and personality. And I think that was definitely the purpose of the artist, was to capture hopefully like the lifelike just personality and love they have for the cat. And yeah, I think what she was trying to do, or the artist was trying to do, was get a familiar object in this familiar surrounding. Cats are beautiful, and I think the artist captured their cat's uniqueness and personality. And she probably wanted to make it because it's a living creature and now it will live forever. And I do like it. It's a wire sculpture that looks almost two-dimensional. I think the artist accomplished what they wanted. Personality comes through in the face and the ears and the overall position. I like that it's doing something and it's kind of part of the surrounding. I'm getting kind of Alexander Calder vibes, two-dimensional, but there's still movement, yet while being static and abstract. It's light, but it doesn't look like it's going to fall over. It looks like she's pretty positioned there. And yeah, I really love it. I think it's abstract to what she wanted.
All right, nicely done. Very good. And again, kudos for keeping under half an hour. I really appreciate that.
Oh, good. It seemed a little long. Sorry.
No, that's totally fine. Thank you very much. Excellent work. Any other presentations that people want to do? Then let's give a crisp high five or a short applause to the people that presented. Yay! All right. Oh, Grace, you're here. Is Kelly here? Or Bailey? And how about Brianna?
I'm here.
Okay. And Lauren, have you come in? Okay. The rest of the time we're talking, I was kind of hoping that more people would be able to do their critiques today, because we still have several to do, and it's going to be difficult crowding them in the next 2 weeks that we have together. So I would recommend that on Tuesday and Thursday, when you first come into class, let me know that you need to do the critique, and we'll do that right at the beginning. And then again, we will revisit that on Friday. Excuse me, and get them on our Teams meeting as well. Who is wrapping up their PowerPoints?
I am, and I actually have a question. Mine is 5 minutes long. Is that okay, or is that too short? Because I saw Summer's and it looked great, and it was a little bit longer. So should I make it a little bit longer? Is that
I think 5 to 10 minutes is really good, and I think hers is fit like right in the exact middle of that. I think if you go under 5 minutes, you're not really giving your subject justice, and if you go over 10 minutes, it's probably too much. So I think 5 minutes will be okay.
sounds good? Thanks.
Sure thing. Anybody else?
I'm working on it. It's been a while since I've used PowerPoint, so it's coming along.
All right, good. I'm glad. I tried to find a tutorial that would help everybody, but I also know that the department has several resources to help people work with those kinds of things. So if you have any questions about it, if you can find something on YouTube that would uh, help, or maybe or if you think that you have found something that could help other people, would you send it to me, and I will send it to everybody too. Have you guys ever gone to the advisement office on the 6th floor? Anybody?
Maybe in passing, but never actually to visit and get advice.
Okay, it's the reason why I asked that is because of the location. I want you guys to know what the location is. It's right where the Norda uh, kind of blends into our building, and there's a room that's right across the hall from the advisement center that Jason converted into a gallery. And right now, it has the works of, I believe, like 5 or 6 different students in it on display for the next month or so. Two things. One is I would highly recommend looking at that, and I'll explain why in just a second. And the second thing is, if you guys go to that and see any of the three-dimensional work that you would like to critique, take an image of it on your phone and send me the picture, and we'll share that picture with everybody, and you can critique it as well. All right? The first thing I wanted you to think about was look at that space. If you do get a chance, check it out. Look at the space, because there will be an option opening up in the next several months for you to uh, plan and execute a show potentially. I don't know what the parameters are, and it may be just limited to VFA shows, but all of you will have a final show, and at the very least, it will be good to keep track of what's going on there so you can see how other people are setting up their exhibits. But again, it's so new that it doesn't even have a name yet, but it's the gallery space. It's right across from the main Visual Arts Advisement Center on the 6th floor, right by the entrance to the Norda. Does everybody have an idea of where that is? Whether or not you've been there?
Yeah, you're kind of forced to pass it when you're on your way to GT building if you're coming from like the library or on that side, right?
Yeah, I think coming from the east parking lots, you're pretty much forced to pass it. Yeah, there's no other way to get around it. All right, if there's no other critiques this morning, I wanted to talk a little bit more about cocooning, and I really hope that nobody feels like I'm trying to beat this to death. It's something where almost all of you, if not all of you, focus pretty much primarily on two-dimensional art. So this class it's an ongoing struggle, and it's difficult just because you're being forced to think about something that you've never encountered or never had to encounter before. Uh, it would be kind of like going to school and having to not going to school, but trying to get your driver's license in another language where you it's not something that you'd ordinarily use. With that all being true, the cocooning thing, because it does deal with ideas of conceptual art and more philosophical leanings, I imagine that it's even more difficult for most people to deal with who are too deep professionals. So I hope you don't mind that we're going to be talking about it a little bit more. And I did want to screen share and look at some other images from other artists. The cocooning, it encompasses more than just wrapping something else. It also deals with things like texture. We look at Nick Cave's work. How many of you guys have gone through the research section of this module 6? Has anybody?
I looked at it, but I haven't done the writing portion of it yet.
Okay, I'm not
had a chance to,
right.
and
What's that, Taylor?
I had a chance to as well, and I watched the video about Nick Cave, and I thought it was fascinating.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm not asking about people who did the writing. I just wanted people to look through that. So Sarah and Taylor, thank you very much. One thing that I think is particularly amazing about Nick Cave is he is not just wrapping something. He's not making just a cocoon. What are Taylor? I'm going to put you on the spot for just a little bit. What are some of the other things that he's addressing in his art, rather than just obscuring the dancers?
Some of his pieces have like political meaning for them, and then a lot of it just. I noticed that he thinks a lot about what the materials are that he uses. He thinks about the narrative that the material uses. I noticed yesterday I saw a piece that I didn't recognize, but it was made out of Beanie Babies, and that had to be purposeful.
And terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers.
No, I think that's really good. He's dealing with a lot of other things. One of the things you mentioned. Oh, by the way, first code word, dogma. Just like the movie with Brad Damon. One of the things that you mentioned was narrative. Nick Cave, he works a lot with obscuring a dancer. He also is very aware of materials, texture and color, how they fit together, how they don't fit together. Some of the costumes that he makes, he will do specifically because the materials just do not feel like they belong together. And he's doing that specifically to evoke or instigate a reaction from people. And he is very political as well. We can see that because whether or not we know what his politics are is not really as important as the fact that when you look at a lot of these dance costumes or sound suits, you can see that there are a lot of contemporary references going on that are juxtaposed with each other. Contemporary references that have to do with very emotional hot button topics sometimes. I kind of kid about the Beanie Baby one. The Beanie Babies, I remember my family was part of that absolutely insane craze as well. And it could also be a commentary on childhood. It could be a commentary on the desire to acquire or to collect, the need to collect. In Western society, a lot of us have developed neuroses regarding the need to collect. And I think a big part of that is fueled by market forces trying to get us to buy more stuff. He's also dealing with issues of parental guilt, that we're constantly being told as parents we're not doing enough or good enough for our children, and in order to show them we love them, we've got to buy them stuff. But he's also showing something that's cute with big eyes. So there's all those things going on with the Nick Cave Beanie Baby suit just by itself. And we could talk about the same number of things about any of the other suits. Well, as you guys were going through the participation exercise this week, where I asked you to take 3 pieces or 3 objects, wrap them, and then wrap them together, I would like 5 different people to just talk very briefly, and by briefly, I'm talking 1 or 2 sentences, about the kind of transformation that these objects went through. And you can talk about their assumed context, how they became hidden, what they did form-wise, how did the shape change, or any of those other things that we've been talking about in class as it goes in regards to cocooning. So that's 5 different people. Who would like to go first? And by the way, the second code word is United, just like the airlines.
I can share.
All right, please do.
One of the things I thought was pretty interesting while wrapping was when I wrapped them individually, the items were still pretty recognizable. I mean, the generic shapes were still there, and I knew what they were. But as soon as I wrapped them together, the shapes disappeared, the contours completely changed, and they became one globulous form that I didn't really recognize anymore. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
I think that's a really good observation, and that ties directly in with one of the points of the exercise. So excellent. 4 more people. Who's next? Oh, we had a person duck out of the meeting, and I was going to ask who left, but I probably wouldn't get any answer. No, but who's next? Who would like to go next? Okay, Sarah, please.
Yeah, it was just cool. The second you covered it up, it turned into something completely different. And I don't think until I actually covered it up and had something in front of me to work with, until ideas started popping into my head. I was kind of lost for what to do until I wrapped it and was like, oh, okay. So then ideas started flowing about what else you could put inside and what different shapes. Doesn't have to be all one shape, or different textures that would do cool things. Ideas really started to flow once it was covered. But before that, it was like, okay, I'm just going to cover this. I don't know.
Why do you think that that transition happened once the thing started getting covered? Was it that you were thinking so much about the object as what it is that you couldn't see it as anything else? Or did the covering give you permission to do something different? What do you think it was?
I think I was just looking at it from an outside perspective, and I thought if I didn't know what was underneath here, I would have no idea. And because I had no idea, I was immediately curious, like, well, what does it look like? What could I try and make it look like? How could I make people more curious about what's underneath here? So I just put myself in a position of an outside party, I guess, and thought I would have no idea. Nobody would have any idea. I can barely remember what's under there.
Yeah, most of us have a hard time remembering what we had for breakfast an hour ago. No, I think that those are really good observations, and this is part of a transformation that sometimes as an artist, it can be really effective if you put yourself in your potential viewer's shoes and ask questions like that. So very good. There is a series that Jeanne-Claude and Christo did where they had models that they would wrap in plastic, and they would film the process, and they would take photos of it. And so you'd have these living, breathing human women that would be wrapped in this heavy duty kind of tarp where you're not sure if they're breathing or what, but he would have them hold different simple poses so that when they were wrapped up, the only way you knew that it was a human underneath there was because a hand, you could see a hand or some hair or a foot. And at the time, a lot of people thought that that was a huge, massive waste of energy. But Jeanne-Claude and Christo were very feminist. And if we look at those kinds of things where they are taking human women, wrapping them in heavy-duty plastic tarps, so you can no longer recognize them as human beings, and the only way that you know that somebody's there is because you see a hand or a foot. All of a sudden, that starts delivering a whole bunch of potential, or opens the door for a whole bunch of potential questions about what it is. And knowing that they were feminists, there is a really interesting avenue of questions that can be asked uh, directly related to those two facts. And I think it's really fascinating. One is, by being able to recognize somebody by the smallest part and the rest of it is completely wrapped up and occluded, does that mean that women in society are recognized as women from just the smallest part of themselves and everything else is carefully wrapped and hidden away? But there are a lot of other questions too that can be asked. So I would recommend very much visiting their website and checking out those videos and just go through that this weekend and try to look at it from the artist's perspective. All right, we need 3 more people commenting. Who would like to go next? How about Brianna? Would you like to talk about the transformation that happened as you were wrapping something?
Yeah, I actually brought some metal objects to wrap because I thought that would be interesting. And I wrapped them in like saran wrap and ribbon. And at first I wasn't gonna do the ribbon because I wasn't quite sure like how it would look. But once I added color into it and I started changing the silhouettes of all the objects I brought, it was really interesting to see because they looked like completely different and I was like really struggling. I was like, I still know what they are. And then when I wrapped them all together, it was fun because I kind of made like a little tower, and it ended up looking like a little mountain of like plastic wrap, which is kind of fun. So I just kind of had fun with it, and I feel like that helped me enjoy it a bit more than just trying to plan and think about this one.
I think those are really good observations. You could still tell what they were, but as the silhouettes became changed, you it sounds like you were able to feel more freedom in doing more things to it. I think that's excellent. As you move forward and do this, the actual project for Module 6, think about all those things. Think about what we did in class this week. Think about, go through the research and think about what those artists are doing. And like Brianna, please give yourself permission to kind of have fun and play with it. You don't need to make a strong political statement, and you don't need to deliver an incredible emotional impact. What we're doing is experimenting. And the more time you put into it and the more thought you put into it about how you can make it different and um, I don't know if the right word is fun, but engaging somehow, I think the more successful it'll be, whether or not it is the next big political statement. So yeah, those are good observations, Brianna. Thank you. Who would like to volunteer next? How about Rachel?
when I wrapped things up, one thing I found really interesting is just like I specifically chose some objects because I thought like they had a lot of detail and it'd be nice to see how that detail showed up when it was wrapped. But when I wrapped it up, it actually lost like pretty much all of that detail, especially like the smaller the object was and the thicker the wrapping was, it just kind of turned into a shapeless blob. And like it was really interesting just to see how something that I already knew like what it was. After I wrapped it, it just became completely unrecognizable, and I didn't like I knew what it was still, but it was something different. Like, yeah.
I think that's a really good observation too. As an artist, how do you struggle with that? If you know what the narrative is already in the context, that opens up another avenue of conversation as well. How do you deal with that when you know what it's supposed to be and you're trying to pretend to look at it from somebody's outside um, from another perspective? So I think those are good observations. You know, the more detailed it is, it loses the detail, and even though you know what it is, it becomes something completely different and mysterious, even to yourself as well. And I think that those are good conversations to have just in general about the work that you do. So really good observations, Rachel. Okay, number 5. Who's going to be the 5th one?
I can share real quick. Um, I wasn't present in class last Tuesday, but I asked some of my classmates, and at the beginning I was also a little confused, like Sarah, and I was like, how am I gonna do this? But it definitely helped me to be more free, I guess, and like let the materials kind of go with the flow. And just once I started wrapping the elements that I had, um, the shapes definitely changed and the texture because the materials were obviously different. And I also had some thick ribbons, and so it like pretty much covered the whole thing. And so it was like a complete different object what I ended up with. So it was kind of fun.
All right, great. I like the thing that you said. It became a different object. I I got to tell you guys, when my grandpa was alive, it was so difficult to talk to him about art because I would say things like that. You know, this it alters the object or it changes the narrative, and he said, "No, it's still the same thing." Remember, my grandpa was a guy that it ain't art unless you can see it out the window, and it ain't music unless you can whistle to it. Well, we would talk about the object changing as you did stuff to it, or the thing itself changes just depending on you as the observer. Who is the observer, and is the observer changing? The time of day, the point in your life when you interact with something, the object is still changing. From one perspective, yes, it's the same thing, but from almost every other perspective that matters, it's different, and the big difference is you as the observer. So I think that those are good points, Camilla. Okay, the third, actually, I'm going to say the 4th secret word is angels. I wanted to say that to throw off everybody who comes in to see the recording, because it is only the 3rd word, but if we say that it's the 4th one, then it will confuse them and they'll wonder why they missed the 3rd one. So the 4th code word is angels. How are you guys doing with the rest of the projects and the quizzes and getting all that stuff done?
I have some catching up to do, but I haven't lost hope yet.
All right, good. Try very hard not to lose hope. Canvas will stop working at the last day of classes, but we can still email each other through just regular email. You guys all have my email, so we can keep asking questions. And everything is completely due at the last moment of finals. So if there's, I say that because if Canvas shuts down, you can no longer turn things in on Canvas and finals aren't over yet, you can still take images and email it to me. Email the assignments to me. And then I will upload them on Canvas and you'll still get your credits.
I have a question.
JC, go ahead.
Kind of about assignments. The only one that I don't know about anyone else that I'm really struggling with is the plaster sculpture. How hard is your grading on that one?
I think that everybody who has been putting in the time and been purposeful with it and trying to get it so that it looks finished has been doing really well. I'm not grading this as if you guys are professional sculptors or if you're preparing a maquette for public works presentation. But there are things that are kind of disappointing to me. One is if it looks like part of it was carved and then purposely given texture to, and then the rest of the sculpture was just kind of left alone. Or another thing that is disappointing is when somebody just sands the corners off and then leaves the block the same way. One thing that I do want everybody to relax a little bit over is several people have had not entirely catastrophic disasters, but disasters just the same where a piece is broken off. If that happens, do your best to glue it back or work with it. And the more ingenuity you have in keeping it together and finishing it, that's better. You won't get downgraded for trying to make something and then right before the end, one piece snaps off. I recommend gluing it back on with something like Gorilla Glue or like an epoxy, something like that. You can even use super glue gel. When you do glue it on, what you're going to have to do is go through a lot of glue, especially if it's super glue, because you'll have to seal the plaster where it's broken. Make sure that it's kind of looks a little bit shiny if you're using super glue, but make sure that's all sealed. And then after it's sealed, that's when you glue the two pieces together. But I'm looking more towards, when I grade this, I'm looking towards people that are conscious about their history of design, because all of you are professional artists. I'm looking for just kind of honesty in working with the medium, kind of a professional approach to the time being spent, and really doing the best that you can, being aware that you are not, all of you are not internationally recognized professional sculptors. So does that answer your question, JC? Does that help at all?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. I will tell you, one of the most disappointing wrapped objects that I remember, somebody took saran wrap, set their sculpture, their plaster carving in the middle of the saran wrap, pulled up the corners, and then tied it all together with a red ribbon just to the top, like it was a present for somebody. The reason why I thought that was so sad is because they could have done so much more. If you go to the Jeanne-Claude Christo website, and if you remember the slideshow that we looked at this last week, they would took cars and chairs and would wrap them in industrial plastic and then would tie them with rope. And on one hand, that sounds really simple, but they would work for hours sketching where the ropes would go and where the knots would go. So if you're going to do something like wrap up your plaster sculpture, I would recommend approaching it from this kind of point of view. Start off with sketches. Start off with imagining what kind of material you want to use and sketch in a little bit maybe where the folds of the material would go. And as you wrap the object, try to match what you've drawn. And if it doesn't match it exactly, try to get as close as you can. draw and work out where you're going to put the string, how heavy the string is, or the rope, or whatever it is that you're using. Where do you think the knots should go? Why should they go there? And ask yourself these questions. It may only take you 45 minutes to actually wrap the object, but it may take you 8 hours to figure all this out and do several sketches. Now that's an extreme. I think most of you are going to spend in the actual wrapping probably a couple hours, but in the planning, do all the research, write your paper, and then in the planning, spend your time just trying sketches out and trying to see what, or imagining what would look best. And it may very well be that you'll wrap it up and you'll realize it looks stupid, so you'll undo it, throw all that away, and then wrap it up in something completely different. I've also had somebody go around and collect leaves. They had to soak them in water for a bit so they were soft enough, but then they were able to wrap the leaves around their sculpture and tie it with string really well. And they did it in such a way so that the tips of the leaves, each subsequent layer, the tips of the leaves were revealed over the previous layer. And it ended up looking like a kind of weird, almost fur covering the sculpture. So that was actually pretty cool. And I think I mentioned in the evening class, probably not to you guys, one person bought just a whole bunch of dollar store candles, set them one at a time on top of their plaster sculpture, and just lit them on fire and let them burn down to nothing. And what that did is it completely coated his plaster sculpture with layer and layer and layer of completely randomized colors of dripping wax. And it was, on one hand, it kind of looked like a stalagmite. On the other hand, it looked kind of like a fever dream when you're on the flu and you just feel really sick. But it was really fascinating, and it was a very odd juxtaposition of textures with all the different colors of dripping wax. Are there any more questions in the couple minutes that we have together?
You keep mentioning that previous students have used their sculptures as the objects in which they wrap. Is there a specific object that you would like us to wrap? Or is that up to us as the artist?
That is completely up to you. I use that as a example because that used to be a requirement. Use one of the things that you've made, but I don't think it needs to be a requirement. And it may even be that maybe 2 or 3 of the things that you've made, you want to put them together and make a larger thing that you wrap all together. That might be really interesting too. If you do that, if you do use your own work, I highly recommend photographing your work before you wrap it up. And it might even be kind of cool to, one student, the student that did the dripping wax, they took a photo, a couple photos as each candle melted, and had a little tripod set up so that they could have the photo from the same spot. And they made like a 30-second little clip where it was almost looked like the wax was spontaneously generating from the top of the sculpture because of the time lapse. But Hiram, if you want to use your own work, that'd be great. If you don't, that'd be fine too. But I would recommend taking a photo of your work before you wrap it if you do use your own stuff. And like I said, it might be really cool to wrap a couple things that you've made together. So think about that as well. Any other last questions? All right, I'm going to ask one more time, is Bailey here? Or Kelly? Or Lauren? All righty. If you're not here today, please raise your hand and let me know. Haha. If there's no further questions, we are going to say goodbye to each other. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend. And if you guys do turn in any of those presentations over the weekend, as soon as I get them, I will start the process of putting them on the YouTube channel for us, okay? And please, everybody go through and give those presentation's views. Alrighty? Okay, everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you.